Discover the incredible journey of a black nurse who changed a millionaire's life in just 30 days. Maria was one of the first faces you saw as you walked through the entrance of Chicago's urban hospital. Her smile lit up the sterile environment, making you feel like you'd stepped into a sanctuary, not a place of illness. At 32 years old, Maria wasn't just a nurse. She was a lifeline for her patients, believed in healing not just bodies but spirits. Growing up in a close-knit black community, Maria learned from an early age that life was hard but love and resilience were essential. She wore her identity like a badge, easily navigating the bustling corridors, embodying dedication and relentless compassion. On a fateful Wednesday, she was assigned to care for James, a 45-year-old millionaire with a heart condition. He lay confined to a hospital bed, surrounded by walls that felt like a gilded cage. To him, nurses were just temporary fixtures, people who provided a service and then faded away. He was accustomed to pressing a button and receiving whatever he desired, but Maria was different. Her presence was more than just a job. It was a calling, fueled by a passion that made his cold, clinical world feel a little warmer. His eyes, once sharp and dismissive, softened as she introduced herself. Day by day, Maria poured her energy into him, adjusting his pillows, monitoring his vitals, and sharing stories filled with hope and heart. She listened to his grumbles. She learned about the penthouse, the money, the social events that filled his schedule. But as they spoke, she sensed a deep undercurrent of loneliness. A familiar pang decorated her chest. She had seen it before in so many patients, a haunting reminder of how wealth couldn't buy the connections necessary for joy. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As days passed, a fragile bond began to develop. Maria's laughter crossed barriers, slowly melting away James's cold exterior. One afternoon, while she changed his bandage, he opened up about a rift with his daughter. Her wedding had come and gone, and he hadn't even been invited. Maria's heart ached for him, yet her mind raced back to the countless mothers who lost touch with their children because the world told them their worth lay in financial success rather than love. But just when it seemed James was finally ready to embrace the life he had neglected, a miscommunication ignited doubt. A nurse's note went missing. Medication was delayed. Tensions flared. James's previous biases reared their heads, and Maria felt the sting of being misunderstood once again. Their healing journey was now at a standstill, both edging away from a connection that had begun to bloom. With the community fundraiser approaching, the air was thick with anticipation. Maria knew it was her chance to encourage the change they both yearned for, yet uncertainty loomed over her heart. Would they find their way back to each other? Or would they let prejudice and fear rip them apart? As the event buzzed around them, both found themselves questioning everything they had come to learn about connection, hope, and resilience. The moment felt electric, uncertain as they both reached for understanding amidst a crowd hungry for change. As the day of the fundraiser dawned, a mix of excitement and anxiety hung in the air like a low fog, wrapping around Maria and James both. The hospital's community room had transformed into a lively gathering space, adorned with colorful balloons and twinkling fairy lights. Each detail sparkled with possibility, yet shadows of doubt loomed over Maria's heart. She could feel tension tethering her and James, a painful reminder of their recent friction. Maria put on her best smile, though inside she wrestled with unanswered questions. Would he forgive her? Would he see the goodness she saw in him? Her legs felt heavy as she moved through the room, greeting guests and checking on last-minute details. She could hear laughter, feel the warmth of her colleagues, yet her mind was miles away, anticipating James's entrance. When he arrived, it was clear he was dressed for the occasion, a crisp suit hugging his frame. As soon as her eyes met his, she noticed his nervousness, an unexpected crack in his polished demeanor. James walked among the crowd, but he seemed to float, disconnected from the vibrant energy around him. Maria's heart raced as she approached him, their conversations of the past weeks echoing in her mind. "James," she started, letting her voice break through the noise. "I'm glad you came." He met her gaze, but there was an edge to his expression. "I didn't come here for you, Maria. I came for this." He gestured vaguely to the crowd, his eyes darting away. "But you matter more than you realize," she replied softly, desperation tinging her words. "You have a chance to connect tonight." He paused, visibly torn, as if wrestling with something deeper, something he wasn't quite ready to share. The sparkle in others' eyes faded as they fell into the gravity of the moment. Maria felt the weight of their surroundings, and her pulse quickened. Everyone waited for her to break the silence, but it wasn't her turn to speak, it was his. Suddenly James's phone vibrated. He pulled it from his pocket, and Maria could see a notification pop up, an invitation to his daughter's event, the very wedding he missed. A flicker of guilt crossed his face, transforming into anger almost immediately. He quickly dismissed it, but Maria could see the storm brewing inside him. "Why did you never mention her?" Maria dared to ask, catching him off guard. It was a risk, but one that felt necessary to breach the wall that had grown between them. "Because I thought." He hesitated, words tangled in his throat. "Because if I talk about her, I'd have to admit how much I've lost." His voice cracked, raw and vulnerable. Maria's heart pounded. She saw a chance to reach him, to remind him of what mattered beyond the money and status. "James, every moment spent trying to impress others is a moment you lose with those you love. No amount of wealth will replace your family." He looked like her words had struck a nerve. The crowd around them faded away, and they stood in the eye of a storm, suspended between their past and a possible future. James stared into her eyes, searching for understanding, but fear still held him prisoner. As Maria reached for his hand, the gesture felt charged, an anchor in chaotic waters. Breath held, she waited. Suddenly, the clamor of a microphone crackled to life, calling attention to the front of the room. Before they could navigate their emotions further, the moment slipped away, thrust into a whirlwind of chatter. What would James choose as loud speeches echoed off the walls? Would he still allow the walls of his heart to remain closed? Or was this his moment to finally open up? The tension rose, and with it came a question: could this event change more than just their lives? Could it also bridge the chasm between family and forgiveness? The answers lingered just out of reach as they stood side by side, surrounded by a world that yearned for connection, just as they did. The microphone crackled again, pulling both Maria and James back to the present. The room quieted, and the soft hum of anticipation replaced their tumultuous moment. Maria glanced at James, who seemed almost frozen, the tension in his shoulders betraying the strength of his resolve. He was a man caught between two worlds: the life he had built and the reality he had distanced himself from. "Good evening, everyone." A voice boomed from the front. Maria turned her attention to the speaker, the hospital director, a warm smile spreading across her face as she welcomed the crowd. "Thank you all for joining us tonight for what promises to be an extraordinary evening of connection and purpose." As the director continued, Maria's focus drifted back to James. The warmth of their earlier connection seemed to evaporate in the wake of formalities. She wanted to encourage him to speak, to let loose the imprisoned part of himself that was yearning to be free. The crowd began to applaud, and for a fleeting moment she had hope. Maybe he'll open up during the speeches, she thought, biting her lip. Yet, as the guest speakers took turns sharing their heartfelt stories, James remained withdrawn. Each clapping sound resonated painfully against her heart, and she wondered if he could feel the same intensity in the room, the hope bubbling just beneath the surface. None of this was just about the money. They were here for connection, for conversations that mattered. "Next we have someone very special," the director announced, and the lights dimmed slightly. "A woman who has dedicated her life to serving others with compassion and strength. Please welcome Maria." The audience erupted into applause, but Maria felt her throat tighten. She hadn't prepared a speech. She wasn't a public speaker. She hesitated for an instant. Then with a deep breath, she walked towards the podium, the spotlight seeming both inviting and harsh. "Thank you," she began, her voice shaking slightly. "I'm honored to be here tonight, but more than that, I'm honored to be part of a community that cares." Look at him, she thought. James was still in the shadows of the room, yet she could feel his eyes on her. Their worlds were inching closer together with each word she spoke. "It's easy to get caught up in what we think we're supposed to be," To chase after success that doesn't fulfill us. I've watched families struggle, uncertainty hovering over them. She paused, searching for the right words, and I've seen the difference a single act of kindness can make. A faint murmur swept through the audience, but she pressed on. Life is not about the grades we get or the awards we win. It's about the moments we share, the love we give, and what we choose to prioritize. She scanned the crowd, her heart thudding louder than the applause. This fundraiser isn't just about raising money, it's about sparking change for families, for individuals, and for ourselves as well. Her gaze landed on James, and she saw a flicker of recognition in his eyes. As she concluded, the applause echoed around her. But when she looked back to James, she found him still wrestling with his thoughts, the conflict evident in the tightness of his jaw. Something had shifted, but what? Let us take this feeling we have tonight and create connections that matter, Maria said, her voice steadying. Let us not leave this room without knowing what we truly cherish. As she stepped away, the energy in the room transformed, but she still worried about James. Would he be inspired to break through the walls he had built around his heart? The crowd buzzed around her, but all she could feel was an urgency to make him understand. Would he finally let her in? Or would fear continue to dictate his choices, dragging him back to a life of isolation? The questions settled like stones in her stomach, heavy and relentless, as the event unfolded around her. What decisions would James make next? And more importantly, would he finally choose love over fear? The applause faded, but the emotions lingered thick in the air. Maria stepped off the podium, her heart racing. She mingled through the crowd, her mind spinning with thoughts of James. She caught sight of him standing alone in a corner, his hands shoved deep into his pockets, shoulders hunched as if he were trying to vanish into the shadows. James, she murmured to herself, feeling a pull toward him. She knew he was battling something inside, something that had built up over years of retreating into himself. She wanted to know what that was. Taking a deep breath, she navigated through the sea of smiling faces, each one of them glowing with the warmth of connection. Yet Maria's eyes were fixed solely on James. There was a peculiar intimacy in the turmoil reflected in his expression. It mirrored her own past years of hiding behind the chaos of life instead of facing it head-on. When she finally reached him, the world around them fell silent. "You okay?" she asked softly, concern knitting her brow. His gaze flickered away, contemplating the floor. "I didn't think," his voice trailed off, caught in the weight of unspoken words. "I didn't expect you to be so inspiring." Maria rolled her eyes playfully. "Inspiring, huh? I was just saying what everyone feels." She took a step closer, allowing a hint of encouragement into her tone. "You've seen what these people are willing to fight for, what they believe in. Can't that do the same for you?" Once again his eyes darted away. It felt like he was trapped on an island while everyone else sailed on by. "I'm not like them," he muttered, the words coming out like a quiet confession. "Why not? You've got dreams too, don't you?" Deep down, her intensity pressed in, urging him to acknowledge the truth he kept hidden. He shifted his weight, the struggle etched across his face. "Dreams are for people who have something to show for them," James replied bitterly. I don't fit in." Maria reached out, placing her hand on his arm. "You don't have to fit in. Just be yourself." The warmth of her touch seemed to break through some of the armor he had built. "Tell me what you're afraid of." James looked up at her, his expression a mixture of anger and fear. "I'm scared of failing. Scared of making a choice that leads to regret. I've made so many wrong ones already." Her heart ached for him. So many people lived under the weight of their fears. We don't have to have it all figured out right now. Life is messy and it's okay to let it be that way. The flicker in James's eyes caught Maria's gaze, something shifting between them. The low hum of chatter around them faded further into the background, the weight of their shared moment growing heavier. "Maybe," he hesitated, a hint of yearning in his voice. "Maybe I need to try. But trying means I could fail. Again. Trying also means you could succeed. You could find what truly makes you happy." Her words dripped with earnestness, and she felt like the room had closed in, shrinking around them, making their conversation even more personal. Suddenly the crowd erupted into laughter nearby, echoing the hope in the air, but she remained focused on James, waiting for him to find his way back to himself. "I don't want to be afraid anymore." The words slipped out, heavy with vulnerability. Maria smiled, sensing a change in him. Then don't be. Take a chance on something that lights you up. Just take one step. Start small. I'll be right here next to you. Their eyes locked, and in that moment, everything shifted. Hope poured into that space, replacing doubt. Maybe this was the turning point they both needed. And as James opened his mouth to finally say what was on his heart, the overhead lights flickered, drawing them back to the reality of the event. Suddenly, the director's voice cut through the anticipation again, calling for the next round of speakers. James, Maria whispered, urgency in her tone, don't let this moment slip away. What do you want to say? Would he find the courage within himself to speak up now? Or would he retreat again, leaving the truths of his heart locked away in silence? James felt the urgency of Maria's plea wrap around him, squeezing tighter with every passing second. The words he longed to say danced on the tip of his tongue, but a storm of doubts crashed through him. The laughter and chatter around them seemed to swirl like a whirlwind, pulling him back into the shadows of his mind. He took a deep breath, hoping to quiet the chaos, but only one thought surfaced, echoing louder than the others. What if they all knew? What if they could see the flaws in him, the failures he carried like heavy bricks? But Maria's soft gaze met his, pooling with warmth and understanding. You said you wanted to try, she encouraged gently. This could be your chance. James swallowed hard. He'd been waiting for a moment like this, a way to break free from his self-made prison. He imagined what it could be like to walk onto that stage, to share his truth in front of everyone. A flicker of hope ignited deep within him, battling against the shadows of doubt that had kept him restrained for so long. Could he turn that flicker into a flame? As the community around him cheered for the next speaker, he felt himself being pulled closer to the edge, his heart racing with the possibilities. But he hesitated, teetering between fear and the thrill of the unknown. I don't know what to say, he finally admitted, the vulnerability prickling at his skin. What if it's just not enough? Maria's expression softened with compassion. It doesn't need to be perfect, just has to be real. You have something important to share, even if it feels small or scary. He nodded slowly, processing her words. Maybe the key wasn't to find the flawless speech, but to let the truth spill out, raw and unedited. And in that moment, with Maria beside him, he felt the weight of the past slowly starting to lift. What if I told them I've spent years feeling like I don't belong? He murmured, his voice barely above a whisper. Then they'd know you're human, just like everyone else. Her encouragement rippled through his nerves, stoking that flickering hope once more. Just be you, James. The director's voice called out again, and as the spotlight fell on the next speaker, James sought reassurance in Maria's eyes. She smiled gently, her faith in him was a bridge over the doubts that had pulled him under for so long. Okay, he breathed, more to himself than her. Steeling himself, he straightened his shoulders, a newfound resolve sparking to life. His heart thundered in his chest, each beat urging him forward. But as he prepared himself to step into the light, the once inviting energy of the crowd suddenly shifted. It wasn't just laughter he heard anymore. There was a strange energy humming in anticipation. Or was it judgment? James's heart sank. What if they could see through him? What if they only saw the failures and not the man standing here trying to find his voice? And then the crowd quieted, signaling the end of the current speaker's time. A hush fell over the room, leaving a gaping silence that stretched like an invitation. His moment was slipping away. Maria squeezed his hand, grounding him. You've got this, James. With that simple gesture, a spark surged through him. Breathing deeply, he took a step forward. The stage beckoned brighter than the shadows he had known for so long. As he made his way toward the podium, the weight of past regrets clawed at him, but with every step, he felt lighter. Could this be the moment he burst through the confines of his own heart? And just as he reached the edge of the stage, a loud crash from the back of the room interrupted everything, echoing like thunder. All heads turned, including his, stealing the focus away from his burning resolve. What had just happened? He could feel the tension in the air shift again, confusion blossoming around him. Would he step back and retreat once more? Or would he embrace the uncertainty and take his place in the light? The sound of the crash rang like a bell, slicing through the anticipatory silence that had enveloped the room. James's heart raced even faster now, thrumming in sync with the startled gasps echoing around him. He looked back, his moment suspended amidst confusion as people leaned forward in their seats, almost holding their breath. A figure stumbled into view from behind the crowd, their expression wild and panicked. It was Mia, a friend from the local community center where James had once volunteered. She had often brought a spark of energy with her, but today her face was pale, eyes wide. "James!" she shouted over the rising murmurs. "Something's wrong." Panic rippled through him. The roiling feeling in his stomach twisted painfully. What could have happened? The moment he'd been anxiously waiting for was slipping away, replaced with a sudden urgency that pulled him further from the safety of the stage. Maria's hand still clasped his, her steady presence grounding him. "Stay focused," she whispered, her voice barely heard over the crowd's rising concern. "You can still do this." James felt the warmth of her fingers wrap around his tighter, and he turned his gaze back to her. "But she needs help," he protested, uncertainty weighing heavy on him. Shouldn't he see what was wrong? But as he looked into her eyes, he could see the unwavering confidence that lit them up. This was the moment and he needed to embrace it. The murmurs quieted and all eyes turned toward the podium, but James's thoughts whirled in the chaos. Was it selfish to step forward when there might be real trouble? What if he could make a difference even just by listening? He took a deep breath, thick with anxiety and determination. But in that breath, a sense of clarity washed over him. Maybe what Mia had encountered was a reflection of the struggle he faced every day. Maybe facing this moment could open the door to overcoming his own fears. Tonight is about being brave, he reminded himself silently, echoing Maria's earlier words in his mind. It's about being real. With one firm squeeze to Maria's hand, he turned back to the podium and stepped forward again. He had to take this leap. The crowd's focus shifted back to him, their attention a sea of curious faces, expectant and hopeful. James cleared his throat, the microphone amplifying the sound in that tense silence. I think we need to acknowledge something important happening right now," he began, his voice shaking slightly but growing steadier with every word. "Something that reminds us of our shared humanity." As he spoke, the fear that had gripped him began to dissolve into something more powerful: connection. He wanted to share his truth, the weight he had carried all this time. With each word, he could feel the walls he'd built around himself starting to crumble. The crowd leaned in closer. He could feel their support building like a wave, lifting him higher than he could have imagined. "I've struggled to feel like I fit in," he continued, "but tonight, looking at all of you, I realize I'm not alone. None of us are." It dawned on him perhaps some of those in attendance felt just as lost or out of place as he had. What if by speaking his truth, he could give them the courage to share theirs? And just as he started to find his rhythm, a voice cut through the director, looking increasingly worried. "Mia, what is going on?" He called out, urgency coating his words. James paused, uncertainty creeping back. He hadn't been finished. But without realizing, he was already becoming something bigger than the fears and doubts he had fought against. Would he still be able to face every discomfort ahead of him? What more could this turning point hold as the weight of his past met an unfolding future? As he met Maria's gaze once more, he could feel the anticipation growing again. What lay on the other side of this moment? Would he continue to speak, or would he allow the chaos to pull him back into silence? James felt time slow, every heartbeat echoing in his ears as he stood there, caught between chaos and clarity. The cool touch of the microphone against his trembling hand reminded him that he had a choice to make. Should he turn away from the stage and go to Mia, or should he lean into this moment, this unexpected call to speak? "James!" Mia's voice broke through his thoughts, a mix of fear and frustration in her tone. "Please, you need to come here." He glanced towards her again, and the worry etched on her face sent another wave of anxiety through him. He could clearly see that whatever was happening was serious, something out of the ordinary, and it involved someone who mattered. But just as quickly, Maria's grip steadied him again. It was like her strength seeped into him and forced him to focus. Here he was surrounded by people who needed connection, and yet a part of him longed to run to Mia and see for himself what the issue was. In that moment, he felt the tug of war between his responsibilities to others and his instinct to protect those he cared about. James took a deep breath, grounding himself once more. "I will finish what I started," he thought, locking eyes with Maria, who nodded encouragingly. I owe it to all of us. He raised the microphone again. I need to finish this. I know how it feels to be on the edge of giving up, he began, wanting to pull the crowd deeper into the shared human experience, the scared, anxious, but ultimately hopeful journey we all traversed. But every moment of fear can also become a moment of bravery, of connection. As he spoke, he noticed people nodding, their brows furrowed in concern but also in understanding. Maybe he was not just telling his story. He was giving them the chance to acknowledge their own struggles. Just the other day I felt lost. I felt like an outsider in my own life, he continued, the weight of his truth spilling out like the pooling rain that began to beat against the windows, a reflection of his brewing emotions. But then I realized I am not alone. You are not alone. A collective inhalation swept through the audience. He paused again, the raw energy in the room sparking something inside him. This was not just his story anymore. It became a shared moment of vulnerability. Just then, another commotion erupted from the left side of the room. A man approached Mia, speaking in hurried whispers. As James strained to hear amongst the noise, the fear in Mia's eyes seemed to grow. It was like an unexpected jolt, a reminder that life unfolded in unpredictable ways, drawing them deeper into moments of uncertainty. Unable to help himself, James stepped slightly away from the podium to get a better look. This was life, the beautiful, messy, spontaneous essence of it. Here was the invitation to be brave, both for himself and for those around him. Mia! He called out, stepping closer to her, feeling the pull of concern tugging at his heart. What is happening? Her face met his, shifting from panic to determination. Someone collapsed in the back. We need your help. A surge of urgency exploded in him. His purpose was calling him, and with it the understanding that true bravery sometimes meant stepping away from comfort and into chaos. This was his moment, the one he'd been leaning into all along. Stay strong, everyone, James said, both to the audience and himself. This isn't over. I'm coming back. He turned away, a part of him ready to dive into the unknown, and another part braced for whatever challenge awaited him. Would he be able to handle what came next? Would this moment finally define him, or would he find himself swept away by the current? Only time would tell, but the path ahead promised revelations that might forever change not just his life, but the lives of those around him. What if this night turned out to be about more than public speaking? What awaited him at the other end of this turmoil? James hurried through the crowd, heart pounding with each step. The atmosphere shifted from anticipation to anxiety, like the stillness before a storm. He pushed away thoughts of his speech. The motivational words he had just shared now echoed hollow in his ears. Mia! He grabbed her arm, grounding himself with her presence. What happened? She was already moving, her voice urgent. This way. There's a lot of chaos. I'm not sure who it is, but they need assistance. As they rounded a corner, James could see a small group forming. The glow of the stage lights cast eerie shadows on the faces of those gathered, and he felt the weight of their shared worry. He spotted a figure slumped on the floor, a woman, pale against the backdrop of the darkened venue. A man knelt beside her, hands trembling, unsure. James's instincts kicked in, everything else fading. The microphone dropped from his thoughts as he approached, and he knelt beside the woman. His training as a volunteer EMT rushed back to him. What's going on? He asked, looking to the man for answers. She collapsed. I think it's a fainting spell or something. The panic in the man's voice only deepened James's resolve. He quickly assessed the situation, taking a slow breath to steady his nerves. Mia, call for help, he instructed, steadying his hands as he checked the woman's pulse. The faint beat felt reassuring, but the paleness of her face struck him with an icy dread. She needed care, and she needed it fast. Stay with us, okay? He whispered, trying to conjure some connection. You're going to be fine. Help is on the way. As Mia rushed to get the attention of security, James felt a warmth spread through the crowd. People began moving, shifting to create space, some kneeling to assist while others offered comfort. The shared humanity reflected in their eyes reminded him that they were all in this together. James focused back on the woman. What's your name? He asked softly, his voice steady yet calm in the midst of urgency. Rachel, she breathed, her energy dwindling. Rachel, just hang on. You're surrounded by people who care. He glanced up, meeting the anxious eyes around him. They were all waiting to see if he could bridge the chasm of fear that had settled over them. Moments felt like hours. With every tick of the clock echoing in the room, James noticed each breath he took mirrored the rhythm of those around him. His hand sought comfort, squeezing Rachel's as he felt her pulse grow steadier, her consciousness flickering like a candle in the dark. Then Mia returned, breathless with two security guards, who quickly assessed the situation. "We need to get her medical assistance right away," one said, his voice authoritative yet filled with urgency. "Let us lift her," James said, nodding. The team worked quickly, sliding their hands under Rachel and lifting her carefully onto a stretcher. In that moment, James felt intangible power rise in him. It wasn't just about being a speaker or a leader. It was about being human and being present where it mattered most. As they carried her away, James stood and looked around, meeting the eyes of each onlooker. The fear that had once been palpable was being replaced by something vital: connection, empathy, a shared experience. The audience who had gathered to hear him speak now became part of a far larger narrative, one of hope within despair. "Everyone, I need you to remember this moment," he called out, his voice stronger now. "Our lives are woven together. We have the power to uplift, to support, to stand by those who are in need." As the last glimpse of Rachel disappeared behind the curtains, James realized he was standing at a precipice, a point of transformation not just for himself, but for all of them. What had begun as a speech had morphed into a rallying cry, a testament to the strength of community. Suddenly, his phone buzzed in his pocket, pulling him from his thoughts. He glanced down to see a message from Mia, her eyes wide and worried. "I hope you're okay. What just happened?" A smile crept onto his face as he read the message. "I'll explain everything later. Right now, I need to finish what I started," he typed back. But as he turned to face the audience again, a new wave of urgency and purpose washed over him. What if tonight was only just beginning? What more awaited him in this moment of chaos? Would he be able to channel this energy into something life-changing for everyone involved? After all, the night had taken an unexpected turn, and the real journey was just beginning. James took a deep breath, scanning the crowd that had gathered under the bright lights. The tension in the room hung thick like fog. He could feel it press against him, yet beneath it, a current of hope pulsed. They were all together, sharing something profound. The abrupt turn of events had disrupted the usual rhythm of the evening, and given it a rawness he hadn't anticipated. He stepped forward, anchored by a sudden clarity. This wasn't merely a moment of crisis. It was a chance to connect deeply. "You know," he began, raising his voice, "what just happened is a reminder. Life is unpredictable and fragile. We can't take a single moment for granted." Several heads nodded, and he noticed a few people exchange concerned glances, their weathered expressions echoing his own intensity. James continued, "In these moments we have to lean on each other. Together we can be the lifeline that pulls someone from the brink." The room shifted. Anxiety gave way to a flurry of whispers, conversations reigniting as people began sharing their thoughts and experiences. It became a communal therapy session, a safe space interwoven with stories of resilience, of victories snatched amid a world full of chaos. As he spoke, James's eyes caught Mia returning through the curtains, her face still flushed from her earlier dash. She caught his gaze and gave a small nod, relief and worry battling within her. The energy between them crackled. A silent agreement had formed that they would stand together, no matter what. "I want you all to reflect," he said, allowing the moment to settle. "When was the last time you reached out to someone? How often do we shy away from those difficult conversations? Tonight, I urge you to create a ripple. Talk to your neighbor. Share your stories. Lend a hand." Catalyzed by his words, people began to shift. They turned to each other, smiles breaking through the initial tension, exchanging names and stories. The air filled with hope and laughter, unveiling a truth James had felt bubbling just beneath the surface: the powerful resilience of human connection. Then, someone in the crowd called out, "What about Rachel? How is she doing?" James paused, a knot forming in his stomach. He hadn't thought about her since she'd been carried away. "I believe she's receiving the care she needs right now. Let us hold her in our thoughts," he replied, his voice edged with urgency. He aimed to redirect their focus. "And as we send our good vibes to her, let us remember to be the kind of community she can rely on." The collective energy shifted again, uniting them with a mission to support one another. The tears in the audience were not out of fear but solidarity, and James embraced that warmth. In that moment, a familiar voice piped up almost shyly. "I'm a nurse. I can help with updates on Rachel if they become available." The man was older, bearded, and wore a small pin of a medical symbol on his lapel, feeling gratitude swell in his chest. "Thank you. Your experience is invaluable. We'll definitely need your presence here moving forward." The evening continued to buzz with conversations, laughter, and support, but deep down, a new current had emerged, one that hinted at more profound journeys yet to unfold, including the fate of Rachel. Just then James's phone buzzed again. Quickened steps led him back toward Mia, who had an urgent look on her face. "I just got word from the medical team. They've stabilized Rachel, but there's more to it. You need to hear this." What could it be? He swallowed hard, a sense of dread mixed with trepidation creeping back in. "Mia, what happened to Rachel?" With eyes wide, she opened her mouth, and the silence that followed felt heavy with anticipation. Would the answer lead them deeper into this moment, a moment that had already shifted lives in unexpected ways? The desire to know settled in his chest like a stone, ready to tumble over the edge. As Mia spoke, the room hung on her words like a delicate thread. "She had a heart condition, something that we didn't know about. The doctors think it's serious. They're taking her to the ICU for further tests. She needs our support," she whispered, the urgency palpable. The weight of her message hit James like a tidal wave. His heart ached for Rachel, but there was also a deeper ripple of understanding that coursed through the crowd. They were no longer just attendees at a fundraiser. They had become a community bound by shared vulnerability and concern for one soul. "Everyone," James called out, steadying himself as he stepped back toward the microphone. He felt their eyes on him, a tapestry of hope and fear interwoven. "I know we came here tonight to spark change, but right now we need to live that change. Rachel is part of us. We can send her our strength." A chorus of agreement surged through the crowd. People nodded, energized by the shared purpose that was beginning to blossom. James felt the power of collective action stirring around him. Let us come together, not just for her, but for everyone in our lives who needs support, families, friends, even strangers. Let us be there for one another, he urged passionately, his voice rising. I believe we aren't defined by moments of adversity, but by how we respond to them. As he spoke, ideas sparked among the crowd, igniting conversations like fireworks. Let us create a support network, someone shouted from the back, their enthusiasm infectious. We can set up a community outreach program to provide help and resources when families face crises. Yes, another voice chimed in. And we can organize regular check-ins for those who need it. In an instant, Maria appeared at his side, her eyes bright with excitement. James, we can team up. You take the lead on this project, and I'll help coordinate the volunteers. The energy in the room was electric, a powerful current of optimism that surged through everyone. James felt it wrapping around him, knitting together the threads of compassion and determination. This was more than just a fundraiser. This was the birth of something impactful, a movement. James met Maria's gaze, their shared understanding deepening. Starts right now, he declared, resolute. Let us dedicate this night to Rachel, to every person who has faced their own battles. We can be a safety net for each other. Cheers erupted, resonating off the hospital walls, an unmistakable chorus of determination echoing into the night. The laughter and conversations that had once filled the room morphed into passionate discussions about plans, strategies, and names for the new outreach program. They were no longer individuals lost in solitude. They were a force of community. Yet amidst the lively chatter, James felt a part of him turning inward, contemplating how far he had come. Just days ago he had felt isolated, uncertain. Now he was embraced by a whole group, and a purpose that reached beyond his own fears surrounded him. Mia, he said, his voice calm but filled with excitement. You'll help me track Rachel's progress, and we'll keep everyone updated. Of course, she replied, her voice infused with hope. Together, we can build something that supports everyone who finds themselves in the kind of tough situation Rachel's in right now. As the evening wore on, they became clearer about their direction. They planned events to raise awareness, set up communication lines for assistance, and created a network that would serve the community. At the heart of all these conversations was an undeniable truth. The act of caring steadfastly links people together. They could remind each other that hope thrived not just in words, but in action. Finally, as the crowd began to disperse, James felt overwhelming gratitude wash over him. "Thank you all for being here tonight," he said, standing in the center of the room. "Let us make this promise. We'll keep showing up for Rachel, for ourselves, and for our community." With a sincere wave, they began to exit, but James sensed the energy lingering in the air, promising connection and continued progress. He knew this journey wouldn't always be easy, but they could face the storms together. In that moment, surrounded by familiar faces and new friends, James turned to Maria and smiled radiantly. "You know, it starts with one connection, doesn't it?" "Yes," she affirmed with a reassuring nod. "Just one." As they walked out together into the night, arms wrapped around each other in the warmth of new beginnings, James realized that tonight wasn't just about healing Rachel. This was about healing every wound each person carried, weaving a beautiful tapestry of resilience. And as they stepped into the crisp night, hope shimmered in the darkness, echoing the promise of transformations ready to unfold. Now is the moment to show your support. You need to subscribe to this channel immediately to not miss the next exclusive stories that will inspire and uplift you. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and help us reach even more people who need to hear these uplifting tales. Comment your reactions and feelings about this emotional ending. It matters. And don't wait not even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. Only true fans understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.